All right. We are at episode 179 of live drawing. Tonight, we're still working on our Undersea Hero backer rewards and box doodles and all sorts of things. We've gotten our books in. I'm getting things shipped out. We've got about 20 shipped out, so we're what is that out of the? So yeah, we're about 1 out of 5, so yeah, like 20% of the way through the boxes that need to go out. I boxed a couple more before the stream. Here's a couple more box doodles. I did a Conan for somebody. By Crown, thank you. I'm using these paint pens to just add little flourishes to them. Here's one that somebody got all of the variant covers, so it's a thicker box, but we've got the tick thinking about a spoon. I thought that would be a fun little gag. Hey, Martha, we are working as best we can. But I'm doing okay. How are you? See if I can back up the camera a little bit. There we go. A really high-tech zoom. This is the regular cover, as most people know, and then this is the beautiful Craig Russo variant cover that he did for us. There's Undersea Heroes blasting through. You're exhausted. Long day of work and everything. But here's a couple of the early bird sketches. Instead of doing a big character on this one, I did 2 little characters. So I thought that would be fun, something different. And then he has these big manta rays swimming overhead. So I was working on these on my lunch break, so we'll keep chipping away at them. Very cool. Yeah, I was actually thinking about Dime Box today. I was thinking about the character I wanted to use and what kind of story I wanted to tell. And I was considering using a different medium. I was considering using like a mixed medium instead of just pen and ink. But we'll see what time allows and what we get to and everything that's going on when we get there. I don't know if anybody's ever used these. These are kind of your disposable versions of brush pens that they have available. They are the same brand as these. My brain's not working right now, but they work pretty well. Nothing that's bad about them is you can't refill them. I don't know if you need script approval, but if you wanted to shoot me your plot idea, that would be cool. Since we've never worked on anything together, just shoot me over a paragraph that tells me what you got going on. And it's, the only thing that I mention about it is we do want it to be, all ages appropriate would be the only thing that I would say about it. Your normal superhero PG-13, whatever, like Spider-Man or Batman level of. I've done plenty of projects that aren't like that, but since this is a collaborative effort, we want people to be able to sell them to folks or whatever. When we get closer to it, I'll put together a blog post put it on the Fat Cat website and invite people to contribute. I don't think you need a whole plot. Just kind of give me I'm using these characters, they're going to do this, and other stuff happens kind of thing. That's generally how it works for me. Is I'll get like a basic idea of what I want to do, and then as I'm developing it, the rest of the pieces kind of fall into place. It's something I've had to, have faith in as I've gone along. Sometimes I don't, and I get frustrated by it. I just need to trust that my brain will connect the dots a little bit better sometimes. I did get the email. I have not reached out to them yet. Thank you for sending that. I've actually been spending a fair amount of time like reaching out and booking conventions, and I've booked two. I can't announce them yet, but one of them is a very big one. So keep an eye out for when that comes down the pike. I can't even mention what state it's in because it would give it away. So, but once I can talk about it, I will promote the heck out of it. We'll do pre-show commissions and all that stuff. Be my first big show in 2 years, basically, since Baltimore. I did reach out to Baltimore. I have not heard back if they would have a spot for me. And I've reached out to some shows in the area in New England and Massachusetts, and have not heard back. So kind of tis what it is. No, I appreciate it. No, it's perfectly fine. I should have sent you um, at least a confirmation that I'd gotten it. I've just been running around packing books, and because there's so much involved in the way I ship these books, like they get a handwritten note, they get a sketch on the box and everything. It takes me some time, and I'm doing it all by myself. So, like I said, I've only gotten about 20 of them shipped out of the 20 out of 100 and a handful. Actually, it's probably about 100 because there's some that I'm dropping off for people. This was just a fun one I started on my lunch break. Just Undersea Hero and a couple of his pals, his fish pals, getting ready to go do stuff. Yeah, I never know. Sometimes when I write to conventions, I hear back right away. Other times I don't. I get a little disgruntled when a local show is kind of like non-responsive, but people are busy, so I try to be patient and all. I don't know if people have caught the weather, but there's some pretty tough winter weather cutting through the country. So if you're in the path of that, be careful, be safe. Yeah, I haven't really reached out to the press media for reviews because I want to get them to the backers first. Like that's been my priority from day one. And once we get those to everybody, I will be elated first off, and then um, I'll be able to spend some time doing some other PR work. Normally, if you have a publisher, there's somebody on your team that can do this stuff, but it's just me. So I forget what I charged for these. It wasn't very much, um, honestly. For the early birds, I think these are the quote unquote mini sketches. So no worries. I've got other big announcement-y things to go along with the when it goes live to purchase, separate from the Kickstarter. But really taking care of those folks is what I've been trying to do. I actually got to grab something real quick, so I will be back in 2 seconds. Sorry about that. I had to grab some ink because we're going to be using a ton of ink on the background here. Other than that, it's been good. It's exciting. Some people have read the book. Um, so getting feedback, finally getting it into people's hands. I did hear from one person, and it was kind of surprising to me, was that they didn't know it was a silly book. They thought it was a serious book, and I don't know if I went wrong in advertising the book or the look of it. I kind of baked it all together with everything that I had learned from working on the tick for so long, and stylistically, I went a specific route away from like Helena and the other projects that were like a little more serious. You know, but yeah, I was kind of surprised to hear that bit of feedback from one person. Most people have enjoyed it, and that's good to hear. If even for 45 minutes, it makes people's days a little bit more fun. That's what the hope is. I don't know what I'll draw my first stream not working on Undersea Hero, but I have thought about it. You know, do I immediately go into Dimebox, or do I have one goof off day, which would be fun? Some people have asked me to try to do more interviewee collaborative videos, but I don't have time to chase people. And most of those shows spend a lot of time booking guests. That's time I spend working on books and stuff. And as I mentioned, the no, I would not want to imagine that either. A dark and gritty undersea hero. I don't think I would want to. I don't think I would want to see that. And actually, there was a thing that I was afraid might happen, and it hasn't happened. I'm happy, and I'll mention it here because Eric Larson posted about it, and I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment and everything. Please don't feed any of my pictures or characters into generative AI to make something look like that. Um, that's not something. One of the things that is important to me and about my work is that I want you to know it's a drawing. And I want the magic to be that it's both a drawing and a character and telling a story all at once. And like that's to me, that's when I read comic books, that's part of the immersive experience. I know it's a drawing. I know someone drew it. And yet I also believe that they're, doing these things. And that's why I talk about believability over realism in comics. Some of the sea floor in Undersea Hero is drawn to look like the colorful gravel you'd see at the bottom of a fish tank. When I was a kid, I always wondered where in the ocean that the bottom looked like that. Where do they get like the orange rocks, man? When I was a little kid, of course. Now you may think that this looks random, but I'm intentionally putting the breaks in certain places, avoiding tangents, using it for framing, breaking up what'll be a very dark background. So like while that looks like I'm just kind of moving the pen around, I'm definitely not. There's actually a purpose to it. Yeah, some of the first batch of books have gotten to people. So, we've reached that point where the first few are getting out there. And I'm mostly doing it in the order of backing, but like honestly, there's some where I jump around a little bit because like there's a like if somebody ordered the Paul Story level, which was just the book, I can wrap that up, pack it, sketch on it, and send it out quicker than if I have to put together a bunch of stuff. So sometimes I just grab one of those and put it on the pile. Hey, I'm glad to hear that. Silly and educational. That's what we're going for. And I did do research. So like the neat ocean facts, you can look those up, or I can send references if I need to. Sorry for the bounciness. This just happens when I have to erase. Thank you, Brittany. Other eraser. Yeah, it's just hidden. Yeah, I mean, I put a lot of work in during the day, and I know how wonderful a short reprieve of something genuine and uh, good natured can be on a rough week, and that's the service I'm hoping to provide with this project. There are other books that I designed to be scary or you know sad or different or thought provoking, but this is just good old fashioned, like you said, silliness abound. It's getting a little warm in here under the lights, so I gotta take off my big sweatshirt. I have to have multiple lights on the paper, otherwise it doesn't show up on camera, so it tends to get a little warm in here. I once again made it so it's hard for me to find a place to sign my name, but we'll figure it out. I get carried away with the image sometimes, and that part, I'm not as worried about as I should be. Should be a perfectly designed spot for a signature. But like I said, they consider these like mini sketches, but I've kind of upgraded them all just partly because everybody had to wait so long. I want people to be happy. So the mini sketches that I based this on, this reward tier, were literally just like quarter-sized headshots that were drawn in the book for a friend of mine's campaign, and they were very cool. And he's an incredible artist, and they look cool. But this is definitely a bigger time commitment, and I think if somebody wanted to resell these, I think they'd be worth more than what they paid for them, and that's good. I modeled these fish just kind of after a scup, or porgies as they're called. It's a fish commonly found on the East Coast. It's in the field guide, actually. I can grab one of those. It's right on the front cover of the field guide, actually. Right here. Scup. They're these like silvery, iridescent blue schooling fish that eat a lot of shellfish. So when you eat scup, they actually have, kind of the flavor of shellfish. They can taste a little bit like scallops or clams, depending on what their diet is. They also eat squid. Squid are very prevalent, long-fin squid on the East Coast here. And I actually think they're a great grilling fish. You can, fillet them and fry them or whatever. But if you like white fish, it's a very sweet, delicate white fish. And they're nowhere near endangered. It's very populous. So as far as like sustainable ocean harvesting, they're very sustainable. I found that a lot of the times now when I draw him undersea, I like to, if it's going to stay in black and white, I will pretty much black out the water most of the time now when it's possible. Because I've thought about doing just black and white stories, but as people see in the book, the colors actually play a big role in setting the tone and what I would say is not just the setting, but the context of the story. Because not only does it want you to be aware that it is a drawing, it wants you to be aware that it is a comic book. And when you use Ben-Day dots, I think you are acknowledging a historical precedent for the medium that is absent when you just use digital colors or you use watercolors or any other format. I think it's very indicative of a type of piece that has existed for a long time. I don't see why not. I mean, it's if people want to do color, we'll do color. It does make it more expensive to print for people that want to print it, but it's just more work. You can hear my upstairs neighbor vacuuming, so if you can hear that over the stream, I apologize. But that's something we can talk about too. If we do what I'm assuming is like whenever the blog post goes up that says, "Hey, this is something we're doing for fun," we'll either just before that or just after that, we'll do a stream where we try to hash some of this stuff out. And I'll see if I can get some of my buddies to pop on and get their 2 cents. See if we can get Jay and Allison, and if I can get Joe or somebody else to pop in. Scratchy noises. Is it doing that thing where like you can't hear what I'm saying sometimes when it gets scratchy like that, or is it just the brush pen that you hear? So I can do that reset if my voice is getting hard to hear. I'll go back in and flatten out the inks here when we finish. I'm running out of ink in my pen. That's why I'm having to use straight from the tube here to finish this off. Okay. Said I'm not good at avoiding tangents. I mean, that's just something that takes a lot of practice and recognition. And then once you really recognize it, it's just something that becomes second nature. So it takes practice, and and there are some pro artists that use like have tangents in their work all the time. Some pretty well known ones. So it's not like if you have, you know, it's not like it's a deal breaker for some companies. It used to be when I first showed my portfolios to editors. That was the first thing that they were pointing at. Tangents, 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 and anatomy. Those are the two things that they just hammered. And then after I had gotten better at those, then they were like perspective, ground plane, line of action. So like there were tiers to being screened through by these editors. But yeah, that was probably the first thing that they ever tried to teach me at the old school portfolio reviews that they used to do at shows all over the place. They still do them occasionally at certain ones. Like CB Sobalski, before he became editor in chief, used to do them. Ricky Purdon, I think, still does them occasionally. He's a guy that used to work for Wizard Magazine, but he's now like one of the lead talent guys for Marvel. I remember at one point I had a sample script from Ricky, and I was just too busy to do a bunch of spec work. And I know most people would like run through a brick wall just to have their name on a Marvel comic book, but at the time it was like needed to make rent, and I just didn't have the time. It was a Guardians of the Galaxy script, I believe. The vacuum has been turned off. All right, we're gonna let that dry. And this was the second one that I had started. Like I said, we were doing right on. Yeah, I mean, just make sure that they're in the clear, and as far as public domainness goes, drawing little figures instead of big ones. I thought I had all of these done, but I didn't have quite enough. When I looked at my backer survey, I needed like 4 or 5 more. So I'm gonna get these 2 done, and I'll get 2 more done tomorrow probably. Instead of a margarita or a martini, he's got a little like tropical drink with a little umbrella and a straw. Yeah, the black backgrounds help with that stuff. You know, we'll when we have that much contrast, we have more to work with. Sometimes I really like the quiet drawings, which is tough to do in like superhero fiction. And I do have an arc planned for Krakus and UH's character, so as you read the story, you just know that there is a plan. Guess I'm just not as chatty. It's been a pretty long day. I've got a lot of work to do. One comic, indie comic that I don't know if many people have read is actually called Concrete. It was put out by Dark Horse in the 80s and 90s, and it just has some beautiful imagery that juxtaposes like the beauty of nature and the absurdity of like superhero and comic book fiction. And I think Paul Chadwick is just an incredible artist, and that's a book that has just so many wonderful, like, you have these big sweeping moments, and then you have these beautiful, quiet character moments, and it's just a great uh, wide breadth of storytelling possibilities in that universe with those characters. Yeah, Concrete's it's a long series that went from Dark Horse Comics Presents to having miniseries. I think it kind of had an extended limited series that was sort of ongoing for a little while. And then I think he revisited the character in more of a graphic novel format later on. Obviously, when they reprint the material, it's all like in trades and graphic novels. But I don't know if they've ever done like a full reprinting of everything because there were so many shorts done in so many issues of Dark Horse Presents and things like that. Yeah, a lot of people. Kniff was one of those influential figures, like Frank Robbins and Joe Kubert. Obviously, loved Kniff. Pat Boyette, another one. The impact of like Terry and the Pirates, and Steve Canyon and stuff is kind of lost now because they were not really carried on into the modern day. They were carried on after he worked on the strips, and they've done reprints of the stuff. But as far as like a redo of the characters or whatever, because the syndicates, I believe, fully own those characters, they've never really done anything with them as opposed to like, you see a Phantom redo every now and again, the Lee Falk stuff, where you'll see, some other adventure characters get a new treatment, but you never see the Terry and the Pirates, and there is some problematic stuff in some of that material being of its time. I'm not lessening the artistic impact that it had, especially in its day. And it's hard for people to grasp just how different newspaper comics were back then. Like for so long, they've been, one or two little pages, and the idea that there were these full comic book sections in newspapers, and like different newspapers had different comics, and you couldn't get all the same ones in different newspapers. There's very little variation now. Everybody gets like the same strips now. Yeah. I have a 0.5 in here somewhere. Let's see if it will work. The ocean is so vast, it's sometimes hard to get scale. And sometimes the only way to do that is to zoom out and draw like tiny little people. Trying to think of if there was any, Frank Robbins did probably the best Kniff with his own level of energy, but I was just trying to think if there's anybody now that I would think of as having a Kniff influence, because like there's a certain era of cartoonists where because they love those newspaper strips, that influence was kind of omnipresent, and I just don't think it exists even anymore with modern cartoonists. Maybe there's a strip cartoonist I'm not aware of out there for sure. That could be a true thing, but as far as mainstream comic book artists, right now, I mean, the influence you see is a lot of Olivier Coipel. You see a lot of um, Pepe Larraz, that kinetic line that is kind of a broken, interconnected series of lines that's followed by tight hatching and spotted shadow areas. Um, to a degree in Love and Rockets, but I don't know. I mean, there's so much of the Bob Montana, Lucy, Archie thing going on there. But they are probably you're probably right. They are kind of like the next in the '80s black and white era. They were kind of the next to have even any of that with Gilbert and Jaime. Mario, I don't see a ton of his work around, so like to say there was a ton of influence, I don't know. I know he'd show up occasionally in issues of Love and Rockets, but I think he largely became like a producer on the series, helping with production, packaging, timelines. I do think that they're doing a reprint of Mr. X. That was a series that uh, both Gilbert and Jaime worked on together in the '80s that I don't think that's been reprinted in many years. So I do think that is on. I saw that on the horizon. Not sure where my oval template is. Let's see if it's in my bag. There it is. Let's see if we can figure this out. You're drawing so bad. Well, take a breath, see if there's a fundamental that you can take a stab at. Believe me, I know that feeling. I'm just gonna go like this, and then I'm gonna ballpark it because I don't want to spend a ton of time working on this circle. Try to think of other things that I do when I'm drawing badly. One of the things that is really important for me when I'm drawing not great is just to finish something, anything, complete a thought. Like if there's a drawing that you've done a million times, just to get my feet moving, that's one of the things that I really do. If it's drawing the tick's head or a Ninja Turtle's hand or something that I've drawn 10 million times, just drawing something like that and seeing it finished sometimes will give me what I need to get back at it and try to push on. Because also, if I finish something I've drawn a million times and I can see something that's wrong with it, that might help me identify what's wrong with this other thing that I'm trying to draw. Hey, Dr. Mask, how's it going? Yeah, we're just working on some of our early bird sketches. We finished this one earlier. I've still got to go in and clean up some of the ink areas before I put some white on it. And on this one, I wanted to do something different where it was instead of a big figure, I draw two little figures. Just a different approach to try to keep things fresh for me. Looking at the character differently, seeing them from a different angle, having them doing something. I don't know if I'll be at Terrificon. I have not reached out to Terrificon. I should send them an email, at least to see if they would have a spot for me. I'm not even sure when it is, but as I was mentioning, I did book a very big show for me. I can't announce it yet, but I will be a guest there. And I did book a couple of a small one. There's a little one in Franklin, Mass. that I'm going to. It used to be the Attleboro Comic Show. Now it's like a collectibles and comic show in Franklin. That's in March. I would do Terrificon. I don't know Mitch at all, the guy that runs it, so don't know what my chances would be with that. Well, I can send them an email at the very least. I don't think I have any shows booked for August this year. So. I've heard it go both ways. I've heard if you're one of his guys that he's easy to deal with, but if you're not, then he just doesn't even talk to you or reply to your, requests. So I hope that I'm persona neutral. So, but because of who I've worked for in the past, I don't know if that's the case. So we do have some mutual friends, and I think he's definitely had plenty of my friends as guests at his show. But I will say the big show that I applied to, they got back to me, you know, right away. So when I announce that, I'm excited to do it. Yeah, I just don't know them at all. I'm completely outside that bubble. I don't know any of the folks there. I just know the um, reputation and things that people tell me. So it's not firsthand, and I can't. But there are people that I definitely trust that have told me how they have had an excellent experience going there, and he's very nice. And I've had people tell me that they can't get in. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll try. We'll ask. We'll be kind. Be polite. And one of the things that I always mention that to promoters is that I don't charge for signatures. So like, I try to think of that as a value add to a show. So if somebody buys a ticket to a show I'm at, my autograph, hypothetically, if you want me to sign something, would come with you, for the show. And I generally do free sketches for kids, and I try to be, like I said, I do panels. I've got a panel I've done for many years called Making Comics, or I'm willing to be on panels about any of the characters I've worked on, or yeah, it's one of those things. I try to be a team player, and I promote any show that I'm at as best I can. I always do a road to that show stream. Um, I generally offer to do artwork for shows at this point because I have no conflict of interest. I haven't worked for Altered Reality in quite some time, so. Oh, I actually, a long, long time ago, lived not too far from where that show is, and I know the area fairly well. So I wouldn't stay at the casino or on campus. Or I did the show at Foxwoods a couple of times. Now it's quite a few years ago. There was a Kineticon, and that was actually partly run by Mitch's former partner, who's another uh, convention promoter slash store owner. His name's Eric. They have Alternate Universe as their store, and he's always been very um, supportive of the comics folk that I know. Um, Staying at any show is kind of expensive now. I mean, there's very few shows anymore where it's like, $100 or $200 a night. Even it's not uncommon. When I stayed at the show in Cleveland, I stayed right next door, and it was expensive, but it was worth it because I saved a bunch of money being able to take the train from the airport and not having to drive or take cabs or lifts slash Ubers or ride shares or whatever you want to call it. Everybody says it's a great show down there, so would love to be there. I generally only ask for a table. I don't usually ask for hotel rooms or anything like that. For a show like that where I'm driving and there's all the tolls and everything, I would hope that they would be cool with that at least. But who knows? It's entirely their prerogative, you know. I actually have a couple other shows I do need to message just because I need to follow up with stuff because people get busy and I don't expect everybody to, um, know who I am or be able to email me immediately or whatever. And I also am at the disadvantage of not having representation, so I don't have someone who like it's their job to just follow up with this stuff. Plastic City, yeah, I love Keith's show. I did the first couple. I can't always do it, but I've done it. It's a nice show. I agree. Love one day shows. It's one of the reasons I love Little Giant up in Concord. I mean, Andy also just gets killer guests and vendors from all over the country. Like he's got vendors coming from New York, California. Jason just does a great job of curating that show, and that's an example of like choosing to like continually make your show bigger, or do you curate it, and just make it better and better, even though it's tougher and tougher to get into. Like if I were just going to a show to shop, that's the type of show that I'd go shop at because I can get art, I can get cheap comics, expensive comics, yeah. But yeah, Plastic City's good stuff. Like it a lot. Don't know when it is. It's out in Fitchburg. Yeah. Little Giants or at least it was in Fitchburg, right? At the ice rink there. It's been a couple of years since I've done it, and I don't like bugging creators for spots like that, but maybe I can drop them a message. He's saying sometimes I just want to sit and watch stuff fly by. And he's watching these manta rays swim by overhead. Not a quip, just a nice quiet little moment. It's the kind of thing where like I would, this is a drawing I would put by a desk, where you're working all the time. Like just take a little breath. Oh, moved to a hotel. I didn't know that. Yeah, I was at it at the ice rink was the last time I was there, and I remember one year I was there, And it was the year they announced that they were going to do the Jenica series and that she was the new turtle and everything else. And I was sitting there with a bunch of the rare Rhode Island variants that I did for her first appearance. And they were just sitting at my table for $10, and I didn't sell a single one. Needless to say, I pulled them off the rack after that, and they were no longer $10. They've fluctuated in price, depending on how they're using the character at all, or if she shows up in a video game or whatever. But I kind of had a laugh at, like, when people told me what had gone down later on. I didn't realize it at the show, what was going on. But like, my cover popped up on like the Hot 10 list or whatever, and people were buying them off of eBay or whatever, and I was just sitting at Plastic City with them in a rack for $10 a piece. And if somebody had came up and bought them, I would have been like, "Oh man, this is great." I still get people messaging me for copies of that and wanting to know if I have them, how much they are, everything else. I know that like some Turtles fans are like mega completists, so they relaunched the IDW Turtles. So like if people want to collect that entire first volume of their Turtle stuff, I probably did 3 or 4 of the 5 rarest covers in the series. In the various miniseries. Oh, I assume that I probably will never draw those characters again. That is perfectly okay. I was actually trying to figure out how to do a sea turtle character in Undersea Hero without people just being like, "Hey, that's a Ninja Turtle." And I haven't come up with it yet, and I think it's just going to be a turtle, and I might use it as a fulcrum for satire. But I don't want to directly satirize like pop culture stuff because I think that dates your work. It sets it to a certain era or a moment in time that you can't escape in the future. So like you're reprinting jokes about, current events of 10 years ago and get stuck into that position of like where it's not current and it's not vintage yet. So okay, yeah. My brother was a big Ninja Turtles fan, and we had the toys as kids. We definitely didn't have all the toys, but we had the turtles. We had some of the accessory things, and like the bad guys. We had like the Shredder and Bebop and Rocksteady action figures. I remember those. I was more into Ghostbusters actually as a little kid. There was a cartoon for that, which was pretty good. I've never read the Now comics that came out in the 80s. I didn't know if they were an adaptation of the show or if they were original stories of that Ghostbusters stuff. And I just don't like reading adaptations. If they're original stories, I would give them a shot, but I wouldn't give adaptations of episodes a shot. Like that level of comic is not. I'm not the consumer for that. G.I. Joe. Right on. I became friends with Mike Vosberg over the years, and he drew a chunk of the G.I. Joe stuff. And he said that they used to, he was the most popular artist in town because when he was working on the book, they would send him the toys to put them in the comics so that he would have models for like the vehicles and stuff. And he would give them to kids in the neighborhood or whatever. I don't remember how many issues he said that he drew. It was a fair number, I thought. I think we're going to call it a night soon. Didn't quite get them both finished, but we got close. Hey, Brian, good to see you. Good night. Almost done. I'm going to finish erasing this, and we'll see if we need to add a little bit here and there. Ah, shoot. We're going to have to use some bleed-proof white because we got some smudges. That's all right. That's fixable. That's what happens when I try to erase before everything's dry. Thanks, Desiree. Got that one. I got that one. I was a huge fan of rock and roll with the motorcycles and the Gatling gun on the side. Yeah. Yeah, Brian, I'll have to bug you if you want to have your stuff shipped or if you wanted to pick it up at Little Giant or what you wanted to do. But I'll shoot you a message off the stream. Okay. Yeah, you've got a big pile, so we'll have to. I would have to get a big custom box and pack it up real tight and put insurance on it. It wouldn't feel right just putting it in a regular box. Oh, they were adaptations. Okay. Yeah. It wouldn't be my thing. But... Let me just clean this up a little bit because it's just bugging the crap out of me, and then we can call it a night. There we go. Yeah, motorcycles are tough to draw. I agree. I've had a couple of scripts where I've had to draw different motorcycles, and it's easier. Oh, the Kato series. Oh, from the Green Hornet. Yeah, I've seen those in like buck bins. I've never picked them up. Well, we're gonna call it a night. Thanks everybody for coming to hang out, and it was great talking with you folks. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your week. Good weekend, and with the weather, stay safe out there, and hope to see you next week. All right. Good night, everybody. I'll see you